Have you ever wondered what the digital front lines actually look like? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on modern cyber attacks. We're going to break down a major threat report and see what today's attackers are really up to.
Right, before we jump in, just so we're all on the same page, every single piece of data, every insight we're about to talk about comes directly from the Managed XDR Global Threat Report by Barracuda. We're going straight to the source here.
Okay, let's kick things off with a number that should really grab your attention. 66%. A massive 2/3 of all security incidents involve a third-party vendor or the supply chain. Just think about that for a second. That means most of the time, the threat isn't a direct assault. It's coming through a trusted partner. It's kind of like leaving your side door unlocked just because you trust your neighbor.
Now, how about the tools attackers are using? You might think they're all about these brand new, cutting-edge, zero-day exploits, right? Well, what's fascinating is that the most detected vulnerability across all networks is, get this, 13 years old. Yeah, we'll get into exactly what that is in just a bit. And for our last big number, 100%. Every single security incident analyzed for this report involved at least one unprotected or rogue endpoint. Not most of them, not almost all of them, every single one. It just goes to show no matter how sophisticated an attack gets, it almost always starts with a simple, unguarded way in.
So with those numbers setting the stage, here's our game plan. First, we'll survey the modern battlefield, the threat landscape. Then we'll look at how attackers actually sneak past defenses. We'll dig into those old, forgotten dangers they love to exploit before we get to their ultimate goal, ransomware. And of course, we'll wrap up by looking at how you can build a solid defense. All right, first up, the modern threat landscape. What are organizations actually dealing with day in and day out? You know, the threat landscape is incredibly noisy, but this report points to some really clear patterns.
So what are security systems catching the most? Well, while the top category here is threat mitigated, which, hey, that's good news. It means the defenses are working. The next two tell the real story. Anomalous login and impossible travel. These are all about your identity. Anomalous login just means someone is signing in from a weird place or at a strange time. Impossible travel is even crazier. It means one account logged in from, say, London, and then from Tokyo just minutes later. Both are huge, flashing red flags that someone's password has been stolen. So, once an attacker gets that initial foothold, how do they move around without setting off all the alarms? This is where it gets really clever. They try to blend in.
This is all about something called privilege escalation. Think of it like this. A thief doesn't just sneak into a building, they steal a janitor's key card so they can get into every single room. And you can see it right here. A whopping 42% of suspicious activity was attackers adding a user to a high-risk group. They're not just breaking in, they are giving themselves the keys to the entire kingdom.
And this super clever tactic has a name, living off the land, or LOTL for short. So, instead of using their own suspicious, custom-built malware, attackers use the standard tools that are already on your system. It is the ultimate camouflage. You know, they're not a wolf in sheep's clothing, they're a wolf disguised as one of the sheepdogs.
And what kind of tools are we talking about here? Well, the report highlights the usual suspects: PowerShell for running powerful scripts, RDP for remote access, PSExec for running commands on other machines, and even common remote support tools like Screen Connect and AnyDesk. These are everyday tools for any IT department, but in the hands of an attacker, they become weapons. And this quote just illustrates the danger perfectly. It's from a real incident report on the Acura ransomware. The attackers used a remote management tool to install their malware, and their actions looked exactly like a normal backup job being run by IT. They were completely, totally hidden in plain sight. So we know how they operate. But why do these attacks work so often? Let's move on and see how organizations are, sometimes, leaving the door wide open for them. Often, it comes down to what experts call basic security hygiene, which is really just the digital version of washing your hands. The most common vulnerabilities aren't some super secret exploits. As this chart shows, they're fundamental mistakes: untrusted security certificates, certificate name mismatches, and weak encryption. These are the unlocked windows and propped open doors of the digital world. And now, let's talk about that 13-year-old bug I mentioned earlier. Here it is, CVE 2013-2566. So this particular vulnerability, or CVE, is tied to an old and broken encryption method called RC4. Now, the reason this 13-year-old bug is still the most common one out there is because it's hiding in plain sight on forgotten hardware. You know, old servers in a closet, legacy devices that were set up once and never updated. It's like a digital ghost in the machine, and it's the perfect example of how your oldest tech can be your biggest weakness. But the threat isn't just old stuff.
The report also highlights new, critical vulnerabilities like CVE 2024-6387 in OpenSSH, which could give an attacker complete remote control. So you see, you're fighting a war on two fronts, against these ancient, forgotten weaknesses and brand new, critical ones popping up all the time.
Okay, so with access gained and vulnerabilities exploited, we finally arrive at the endgame for so many of these attackers: ransomware. This is where all their efforts pay off, big time.
This statistic right here is chilling. The report found that 96% of incidents where an attacker moved laterally, that is, once they got inside one machine and started spreading to others, ended in ransomware. It's like a fire. Once it starts spreading from room to room, the whole house is probably going to burn down.
And the speed, it's just terrifying. Take a look at this Akira attack timeline. Just 10 minutes from the initial breach to moving laterally, 1 hour to start stealing data, and only 3 hours from that first intrusion to full-blown data encryption. Your window to detect and respond is incredibly, incredibly small.
So how does this actually happen in the real world? This quote from another Akira incident says it all. The entire attack started because of a single ghost account, a login that was created for a vendor and was just never shut down after the contract ended. A simple, tiny oversight that led to a massive breach.
Phew, okay. We've seen the problem from pretty much every angle. So what's the solution? The report wraps up by focusing on practical, concrete steps for building resilience.
Here are the 4 key takeaways. First, enforce multi-factor authentication everywhere, no exceptions. Second, have a really robust schedule for patching your systems, both the old ones and the new ones. Third, train your people to spot these threats. And finally, adopt a unified security platform that gives you total visibility across your network so nothing, like that rogue endpoint or that ghost account, slips through the cracks.
And that wraps up our deep dive into the Barracuda Threat Report. If you found this explainer helpful for understanding the modern threat landscape, please do us a favor and hit that like button and subscribe. It is a huge help and it allows us to keep making content that keeps you informed. Thanks for watching.